You just click the got it button there. Thank you. All right, I am calling to order the meeting of the Woodstock Finance Committee, March 4th at 12:34. The agenda for our meeting is after additions or deletions, approval of the minutes and citizen comments. We have the review of the 8 major projects that we assigned at the last meeting: the water company, the wastewater treatment plant, the empty lot initiative, the integrated financial model, town village accounting and reporting, financial software, benchmarking, and regionalization. And the purpose today is a planning session. Purpose is just to go through in each case what are the key issues to address, what are the main activities, and what's the rough timing. And we have 1 hour, so we should be diligent. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, just if we could ask folks who have any documents that would support their projects, if they wouldn't mind placing them in the shared folder of the Finance Committee, that would be great. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Oh, here's Jill.
Got your seat. I'm sorry.
The minutes from February 5th are posted on the website. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes of February 5th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Aye.
Any discussion about the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Citizen comments. There are a few people online and a couple people in the room here. Are there any citizen comments?
Who's online?
Andrew Caffrey, John Curtis, Roger Logan, and the rest of the folks are on camera. All right, hearing none. New business, review of major projects for 2024. Reached this project a discussion of key issues, main activities and analyses, and rough timetable. And I just said that haven't pulled up all of the documents readily. They could take me a minute or two to pull up. So the first one is the water company. Jill and Tom McCoy. You want to just talk us through that?
Yeah.
I'm happy to put the links in the chat if people want to pull it up.
Okay, that'd be great if you could do that, Kareem. Then that'll help me actually. So they're all over on my computer.
I've got the wastewater treatment one now.
Okay, let's start with wastewater treatment.
Okay.
That's fine. Tom, P, and Jill.
Okay. So the key issues that we think that we need to do some work on now, is this the best option given our size and resources? There is a plan. And we just think we need to, as any good finance person would do, would be just to kick the tires of it and make sure that it's the right one for us.
And there are other options that could be available to us. And by default, this is not the only option.
So we'll tell you our activities afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay. We want to understand whether we need to do all the work all at the same time. We want to understand whether there's a solution that has a longer lifespan. We want to understand the alternatives. We want to be asking questions about, is this option sustainable in terms of annual operating costs? So we want to make sure that it's maximizing the latest energy efficient techniques and equipment. That seems to be the biggest area of potential savings. And also, does this tackle the major costs for running a wastewater treatment plant? Current proposal doesn't seem to do that. And then another key question is, does the plant capacity allow for increased housing? I think we've got an answer on that, but we want to push that a bit further. We want to make sure that we're maximizing grants and incentives, efficiency Vermont and all other sources. That might dictate some of the ways we do certain things, and we want to make sure that the proposal includes that. And then we want to understand what can be done to keep the current facility in compliance. Seems to be just fix anything that breaks. We're not breaking. So what we've done is met with Eric, we met with Coyle Tanner, the Regional Energy Coordinator, and Efficiency Vermont. Had a good conversation with that, linking all of those parties. And we've also sent the preliminary engineering report to 2 independent sources. the people in the wastewater business who are going to give us more questions to ask or highlight some things that as non-experts we might miss. We think that the next steps are to get feedback from independent sources to address those issues. And then the analysis that is needed is the impact on taxes of $22 million and a big analysis on pay. The rough timetable is that the town is working against right now is to prepare for a bond vote on November the 5th. So an election day, ride on that. So that there's a lot of work to be done with FAQs and public presentations. And then if that's successful, then the next step would be to begin the second stage detailed design phase in December. So that's when energy efficiency Vermont really get involved. We make sure that that happens, or any other ideas that we've had involved. And then we put information and links to reports here about general findings we've had so far. Do you want me to go through those?
No, it's okay. Maybe we just pause there and just see if there are questions about what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to accomplish it, which is what you've laid out. I have one question, but let me just see. Any first finance committee members, any questions?
Kareem's got his hand up.
Kareem, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Not really a question, more of a comment. The price tag of 22.5 was derived from what I learned from Eric. Eric said that the cost could be anywhere between 20 and 25 million. And previously we got a maximum quote of up to 18 million from the lady who was part of, I guess, the engineering team. So I think it would be, sorry, so my question is, it would be interesting to understand what's driving that increase in cost potentially up to 25 million. And at what point do we think that we're going to get a better quote and a range, you know, if we build in some efficiencies, or, you know, again, if we can get something that would accomplish what the EPA wants us to do, but at a cheaper cost.
So that's why we're looking to choose independent.
Jill, I'm sorry, you're a little bit far from the mic. It's hard to hear
No,
you.
I've got it here. So
Okay, yes.
that was the purpose of us asking two independent sources for their viewpoints,
Okay,
because what we've got is a proposal and a costing from that firm who's designed things to satisfy the EPA and make this a plant for the future. But it's one viewpoint, and it's all documented, and you can read it and you can see the costs. There's not detailed designs. That can't happen till there's a bond vote. So we're hoping that two other experts can help us.
okay, thank you. And I'm assuming that as we prepare, sorry, one more follow-up question, Tom. As we prepare for the bond vote, it will be also clarified what the implications would be if we didn't do something like this, right? Besides the fact that we would be operating something that, you know, over time is going to deteriorate probably, and what might be the implications from the town being fined and other even legal implication that would impact the town. I think.
So talking to the engineers, Kareem,
Yep.
the risks are that something breaks.
Well, sorry, can I interrupt for a second? I think for the scope of today's discussion, just to kind of keep it bound, it's
Right.
how will we develop a communications plan, not what the
Exactly.
communication is.
Yeah, I wasn't
You
saying
have
that
that
let's talk about this now. I'm just saying
We're
that
not doing
it would be great if we actually captured that. That's all.
Well, hold on. This is an important question.
Okay.
Because you have here under rough timetable, you know, prepare for bond vote, FAQs, public presentations.
That's the timetable of the project that the town is doing.
So in one of the other work plans, so then that raises a question for us to consider. In one of the other work plans, like for the integrated financial model, which is one that I'm sort of more driving, I've included as a step that we, the finance committee, would take, And the timing of it actually coincides with this. I'm suggesting
Are
that
you
it's,
suggesting a subset under the wastewater that we would use
that we would,
would we use consistent type of presentation?
well, that's,
So that others could view it?
well, that we
So-
should be responsible for.
Well, let's talk about it. The town has a project, right? We're the finance committee. We're not going to do the town's job for them, but are we not going to help the town by adding some conviction that this is the right way to go and adding some FAQs?
Yes.
But it's all one and the same thing that is being driven by Eric.
Correct. I'm not suggesting that we would hold the meetings and then after the meetings inform Eric that we held the meetings. But that I think, given the work that we're doing, we would want to have a presentation and questions and answers that we would give to whoever was organizing the meeting, and they might ask us to actually share some of our conclusions. No, we won't, we're not going to sort of hand off information and then not be involved in the communications. I don't think. I mean, I suppose this is premature. We can discuss it later, but I'm not saying we would I think the town has to decide when to communicate, but I guess what I'm saying is I think the community needs to hear from the finance committee, not just the town manager needs to hear from the finance committee. Does that make sense?
Yes, I just hope that we won't get to a point in November where there's opposing viewpoints. I would hope it's all one team working together.
There will certainly be opposing viewpoints in the community.
Yes, but I would hope that the work that we do helps the town
Yeah,
to propose the decision, the best decision.
Our presentations are, I think personally, need to be non-biased, information only, without a conclusion. So that others can draw. I mean, we can say, hey, look, given the data, this is where it falls, right? We can support something or not, but we have to give both sides. We can't just give
Oh, I was jumping to another conclusion. I was hoping that the work we do influences the November decision.
Yeah.
So that we're in alignment with the town, not opposing it.
No. I think that I think the first step is for us to analyze the various factors on each of these issues.
Yeah.
I have participated in a committee on the town where after doing that, we were unable and unwilling to come up with a conclusion.
Yeah.
I've also suspect that there are things on our list where we will be both able and willing to come up with a conclusion. So I don't think we should have a policy that says we will or will not.
Gotcha.
I think we should we should come to conclusions when we come to conclusions. And if we can't come to conclusions, we can say that.
And we can say that.
Right, absolutely.
So-
Transparency is all I.
Anyway, my point is that and I think this was the intent of Kareem's question, because he's asked me the same questions about the financial model. Because I think we have to budget in time and put on our list of to-dos at the end of our work to articulate our conclusions
Definitely.
and put them into presentations that can be presented and that we represent. That's all.
Okay.
And it sounds like the timing of that for this project is in September. Considering both the time it takes
Yes.
to do the analysis and when the communications has to happen.
Yes.
And in another work plan, I've also targeted September for that time frame. So
So it'll all be part of the same thing.
it might be part of this.
All right. And the biggest thing seems to be who pays. So is that something that you've picked up in your work?
On the water company, absolutely.
And the sewer will be,
If you're telling us that that's part of the issue, then
Do you think it's pari passu?
what is it?
In other words, do you think that the conclusions that the water system, right, will be consistent with that of the sewer?
I have no idea.
Exactly.
it won't.
Well, yeah, but that's substance, not
You
planning.
won't?
It might not be. No,
But
but it could be different. You don't know, but when we get to your piece, can we talk more about the who pays analysis that's needed?
well, in fact, that was my last question about this is I have seen the beginning of I've seen the input, what would be the inputs to a model for the water company, for the aqueduct company to support an analysis of who pays,
Okay,
right? And that is highly detailed, granular customer data.
yes,
that is necessary to have an intelligent conversation and will not have been covered by anyone on the water treatment plant. And only by a handful of people on Charlie, Kimball and Stewart and so forth on the aqueduct company. So make sure, my suggestion is to make sure to build in, to start now, to begin to gather that data so that we can do a who pays analysis. And that data is not going to be in a good format. Yeah, I mean, it's all of the normal, anyone who's ever done a customer analysis and asked the client for the data, there's a big period of time after they get the data and before they could use
Okay.
it. So just
Here to that.
we're now in that middle phase on the water company because I've seen the customer data and it's dirty. It's not terrible, but it's dirty and it needs to be cleaned up because there's big enough questions in it that would affect.
Okay, so we need to, that's on the next, I'll add that to the next steps then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's something, I just want to make sure not to, don't start that at the end of August.
Okay,
Any other comments about the water treatment, Roger?
Yeah, I just an answer to what you were just discussing. I have a strong feeling that to the extent that this committee is comfortable with doing so, you need to come up with as firm as possible recommendations. There's going to be plenty of irrational opposition, and you don't need to lay that out for them. And I think I would just emphasize that the who pays on both the water treatment and the wastewater treatment are huge issues with an unfortunate history. And again, this is obviously decisions that will be made by the select board in Congress with Eric and other folks, but that as much as possible, if you can come up with the most rational, data-driven potential approaches to doing that, I think that would be very fruitful.
Very good. Yeah, agreed. All right, can we move on to the water company?
yes,
Bill and Tom McCoy, and Kareem, if you would post the link to that as well, that would be fantastic. I think there is.
okay, so the key issues are who pays? And what is the work or the plan required before water permits can be issued for new builds?
Those are the two questions we're trying to answer.
I think so, yeah.
And so we're not, which is, I think what we agreed on, but I thought your work plan isn't consistent with this. I thought that, so to what extent will you be supporting the negotiations of the town at all? No.
I
Not
don't
at
think
all.
so. Tom, do you agree?
I'm not arguing we should, by the way, I'm just asking.
I think the water committee is going to be advising the town.
Okay.
And doing negotiating with the water company. So I think we should have some part. I don't think we need to duplicate what the water committee is doing.
Okay.
So, sorry, if I can comment, I see three, that's what I see, maybe I'm wrong. I see three pieces to the water project, right? One is the purchase piece and any financials associated with it. Two is the immediate requirements around repairs that are either driven or not, that are either driven by the state of the infrastructure or by any mandatory things that need to get done. And the third one is sort of long-term projected additional repairs that we pretty much know are going to happen, need to happen over 5 or 10 years, right? And each one of those, and first off, am I correct in dividing it in those three pieces?
Well, are you talking about the work of the finance committee or the work of purchasing the water company?
I'm just talking about what's involved in the water company. These would be the three pieces, in my opinion. My question is, what's our involvement as a finance committee around each one of those three pieces? One, the purchase, two, the immediate repairs, and then three, the longer term type of.
Okay.
I
Required
don't think you
repairs.
could separate the three.
But-
I think the three are interrelated.
Can I give an opinion?
Sure, that's why I asked the question.
So I think, and what Tom has just said is that the water committee is doing a fine job of working out who, what is paid for the water company and working with Eric to make sure the letter of intent is done, make sure the financial advisor and the engineer are hired, and those will give all the answers to your questions. I think the finance committee can do something different, and that's work on who pays and keep pushing this issue about new builds, because that's going to affect the model more than many other things.
Right.
So we don't want to duplicate the water committee. There's financial people on there. But what we want to, I think what we want to do is make sure that the findings are put into the model and we answer the questions that help put good information into the model.
Yeah, and so to do that, just to clarify, I agree with you, but it is a little bit overlapping with what Kareem is asking. I think we need to, in addition to who pays and what work is required before permits can be issued, I think we should say we need to get from the water committee either the cost estimates of the three things that Kareem talked about, or a range of cost estimates that they need to tell us the financial conclusions from their
Okay.
plan, and they're the ones that need to Tom's point, since you can't separate those three things really, and that's what they need to be looking at when they're doing their acquisition analysis. We need to say to them now, we expect you to tell us year by year what.
They will give us a pro forma of what
Give
the
us-
cash flow looks like, and then
Exactly.
we'll figure out what the financing costs are. And
Exactly.
then we're gonna, draw the line, how that works with projected users, payers, and the
Exactly,
like.
and debt and financing and the whole bit. And we need that, and this is a point that Ellen's made earlier, we need to know over what time frame they're doing that. We know that they're going to do it. I mean, I've already seen the estimates for the first 10 years.
Look at technology. He's walking off the train. Wow.
It's amazing.
Oh,
So we already
It's just
know
those two projects
for water company and wastewater treatment. Is that what you mean?
for the water company.
For the water company, when you say,
There were two distinct projects.
no,
the
there are
cost-
6 or 8.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's a 10-year plan across,
All right.
I think 6
I
projects.
guess I haven't.
Okay, so I've added that as a key issue then for us, right?
Yeah, we just, right,
Yeah.
for both of, yes, for both projects, actually, for both wastewater and water, but particularly the aqueduct companies,
Yeah.
there's another team that's doing
So
that.
the cost for the wastewater treatment plant is going to not get any better than we have now.
Right, so that's why I said it's really the aqueduct company.
Right.
Does the wastewater treatment plan committee, are they dealing with the infrastructure?
What do you mean?
Well,
They're looking at the plant only. So
only the plant.
only the plant.
Okay, not the pipes that go from everybody's house to the plant.
All right.
So the best number you've got is from the engineers, their picture of the plant in future.
So Kareem, so that's envisioning, I know you were asking, I don't know if you have a point of view, but are you comfortable with the scope and purpose of what
Yeah.
Jill wanted?
Thanks.
All right, any other questions about the water company? Jill, we should discuss as I said, I've been exposed to the next layer or the most granular layer of detail of the water company, customer by customer usage.
Yes.
So forth. We should discuss offline who I think you guys need to be the ones to analyze that, think about the different ways of charging, which is really a question of who pays and so forth. I'm happy to help you with that. And the first water committee that Charlie and Stuart and others worked on did some thinking about that. So in thinking about the who pays issue, as you think about the work plan, just consider that. I don't want to duplicate the effort because
They're not carrying on with that work.
they're not carrying on with their work, but they did some of the, they
Okay.
did some scenarios on who pays.
So
So
that'd
talk
be
to them.
interesting to see what their
Right.
conclusions were prior to us reinventing them.
Correct, and I don't think they had conclusions, they just said there's 3 different ways of charging, there are actually 30 different ways of charging. They looked at 3 of them and they said, here's what the implications are. And they did that on the top of data that needs to be cleaned. So that's where we stand now. We're not starting from scratch, is my point. So just,
Yes.
and the point is that I don't wanna, since I'm gonna be driving the integrated model, I don't wanna duplicate that work, and I have already some spreadsheets that I could share with you. We just have to decide who does what. And I'm happy to give it all to you. If you guys wanna do it, that would be great.
You don't need to do that.
John, please note that a result of the due diligence phase we're entering, which should be completed by June or so, is that we'll have more refined answers to all these questions.
Okay, great. Including presumably in the due diligence, the collection of any other additional customer data that is needed to do this modeling and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, you know, these guys don't even have a certified audit, so it may be a bit aggressive in saying this is what's going to happen, but I think we'll have much better data by the early summer.
That's great. All right, anything else on the water company?
Well, I would just emphasize one thing. I think we need to think carefully about our strategy for borrowing, because I don't think we should go to the market by the bond bank just for the purchase price. I think we should aggregate what's in the next 2 years or so to develop a strategy for financing. I would think you'd finance probably 24 months worth of
And
CapEx.
this is really important because it's very different to how Eric is thinking. Eric is just thinking purchase price. And Tom's idea is very different, so it needs to be communicated very strongly.
To him. Also, I think it needs to be the question of where that happens. Is it in the we would use the integrated financial model to do that.
Yes.
So we just have to decide who's gonna, you know.
So what the other thing about the water company is the timing. The findings from the accountant and the engineer will be back by June the 1st at the latest. And there's no reason why the town couldn't have a vote in a special meeting in July. And that might put
Yeah, that's
pressure
what
on
Eric
the
was
analysis
thinking.
that we're doing.
That's gonna put enormous pressure on the analysis we're doing.
But there's no reason. So we have to have, if we wanted to delay that, we'll have to have very strong reasons. And I will fight you tooth and nail because of housing.
Yeah.
So there's strong arguments both ways.
I think one indication will be whether how prepared people are to vote for the school bond with the amount of information we have now. I'm personally very comfortable with that amount of information. Some people aren't. We
Right.
don't really know what that balance is,
Right.
and that may inform us in
Can
July.
I ask Tom something?
But I understand the point, yeah.
Tom, you commented on a fresh look at the financing aspect. Are you thinking construction funding and then try to be opportunistic in terms of long-term funding?
Yeah, I think my basic thinking is that interest rates in the municipal side are pretty attractive right now. And if we could lock in long-term financing for, let's say, $2 or $3 million at 4% or 3%, that would be a smart thing to do. But I think, Tom, we need to analyze all the various sources. I'm not as expert as I hope to become in the various different state and federal programs dealing with water. But I am familiar, and we are familiar as a town, with the municipal bond bank, which has, very attractive financing.
Fine. Thank you for the clarity.
Okay, let's move on. We've now spent, we're on track to not finish. The empty lot initiative, Tom Phillips, do you want to just?
So I have a meeting. It turns out that we can get data for both village and non-village lots, buildable and otherwise, with the ability, and this is very specific, to exclude current use properties. So in other words, if somebody has has their property in current use, and then they go and try to build property, they have to pay retroactive taxes. I think that may be a bridge too far for many people. I don't think we should include that in the model. So we're gonna get village and town and district data. And, quite honestly, I'm not sure they knew it was available, but it is available. So we're getting it. All right?
As part of your work plan, one other step, will you be able to identify an example of, to kind of get us started in thinking what we might do?
I'm gonna do it by lot size.
No, but what I mean is you can say, in so-and-so New Hampshire, here's what they did. And here's one other example.
The mirror is Hanover,
Okay,
and that's what I would like to use as a comparable, because I think it's.
right.
Not only is it kind of close to us, but I think, obviously they have the college to deal with, but I do think there's similarities with Hanover and
Okay.
Woodstock.
So basically, you're gonna do two things. One is you're gonna get the data, do the analysis, and the second is you're gonna look at Hanover as an example.
Exactly.
All right, and any questions about that? Kareem?
Yeah, I just want to clarify the end game for that project, because, kind of, we've been talking about it, is the end game, Tom, pretty much, to, once your analysis is done, right? Is it to come up with a way to quote unquote incentivize in any way possible buildable empty lots to be built upon? Is that the final objective of that project?
My perception is no. My perception was, let's find out what the scale of buildable lots are, what the level of potential capacity might be. We can overlap that potential capacity into water, into sewer, into the town, and into a revenue base. Now, we can try to incentivize that those are all, but we don't even know how many real lots are available. And until we have a raw number, both village and in the 6 districts, right, by district, we can figure out how to incentivize. You have to incentivize through some type of modification to the current zoning. So,
Okay, yeah, no, because I mean, in my mind, it's always been how can we expand the grant list so that, it alleviates the property tax
we
burden.
don't even know what we've got.
No, I understand that you have to go through all these steps first, but okay.
I think this initiative, so to speak, I'm calling it, anyway, the Empty Lot Initiative, but it could over time become the Expand the Grand List Initiative, right?
Call it what you want.
One vehicle of which is empty lots, but another vehicle is zoning requirements and state programs to create.
So it's
incentive zones
basically
and TIP
reverse,
programs.
it's reverse engineering on how to satisfy kind of the grander need.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Right, okay. All right, any other questions about that? So let's start the Expand Grand List Initiative with the Empty Lot Initiative, but we'll expand the scope of that over time. Because I think, again, the single biggest leverage point we have in our integrated financial model as this is more building. Unfortunately, okay. All right, the next item is the financial model, the integrated financial model. Okay, let me put this up. This one I have a document for. So I'm just going to, I'm just going to talk about the issues. And I've laid it out a little bit more granularly. Apologies for that. It's just helpful to me. What's the base case? In other words, the current budget, current tax rates in FY25, and what's the base case for education as well? I think that the model needs to cover taxes, not municipal taxes, not just municipal taxes. We have the model for education, as you've seen, that I have that. It will be what's behind the spreadsheet. I have that, so it's technically easy to integrate. We have to talk about how to tell the story. And then for the aqueduct company, the work. Well, this first issue about is there any scenario in which private ownership is less costly to the town? It strikes me that
Sorry, John, where is this document?
I haven't. It's on the screen.
Can you make it bigger then, please?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'll move.
Yeah, no. I can try to make it bigger.
I mean, John, you could also
No.
put that document in the shared folder at some point.
Yeah, I can, but
Yeah.
it'll take me a while to find the shared folder, so.
If you wanna send it to me, I can just put it in there.
Yeah, let me just keep presenting it and it'll take me time to send it to you.
No, I'm talking about later, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically establishing a base case that says, here's what we are, where we are today, and then from that, under town ownership, what are the options for how the town would, well, sorry, I do think that that someone needs to model, whether it's the water aqueduct company team or us, to make it very clear from a communications point of view that in all of these various options, every scenario that we run, it's less expensive for the town to own it. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And and everything that I've heard is that statement is true in its entirety. There is no scenario conceived in which it is less expensive to the town to have someone else own it. There are also non-financial benefits. So someone should do that analysis. It's quite easy to do. And it's been largely done, if not communicated, by the current team. Actually, it's been communicated also. Beyond that, under town ownership, what are the options for how the town would charge for water and what is the financial impact on the various constituencies? And so Jill, we just talked about that. I've laid out some, we have to clean up the data, we have to build the model and so forth. But this may be work that the water company team is going to do. It's just needed in order to build the financial model, to integrate it to the financial model. And the same is true for the water treatment plant. For the town hall project, we don't have a team. I know, Tom, you're involved in that. So I think, Tom, I think yeah. Oh, the new team doesn't include any, it's just the select board and Eric, basically. Select board trustees and Eric, I think, yeah.
We've had some conversations with Ray.
Sorry, say that again, Tom?
Had some conversations.
Okay, good.
Pentangle has had some conversations with Ray. We need to have more, frankly, because I don't think you're thinking about it exactly the right way.
Yeah. I would agree with you on that. So in any event, the only role that the integrated financial model team will take is to get data from the town hall team as to what is being modeled. Sorry, Tom, can you mute yourself again? I know it's hard, you're in transit, but we can hear you. Roger, I'll call on you some of this. On the next page, and then the other analyses are, what are the longer term opportunities for cost enhancements, that should say, for improving productivity, basically. So I think we would talk to the town manager and the departments. I think we would benchmark and this may be the benchmarking team that could do this or help. But basically just benchmarking per capita municipal costs with surrounding towns and other towns in Vermont and New Hampshire, perhaps New Hampshire. Just to sort of say, we're a town of 3,000 people. We have costs of 8.2 million or taxes of 5.9 million, whatever it is. And that works out to $2,000 per person. And in Barnard, $2,000 or $1,000. And if it's very different from ours, what is different? Why is that different? So to kind of just get a sense of longer term opportunities for cost improvements, also incorporating potential savings from the regionalization initiative, which comes later in the discussion, and also incorporating any savings from investments in new software, which is another item, Ellen, that you'll be looking at. And then looking at longer term opportunities to increase revenues. And here again, I really think that this is going to be about the grand list and about almost nothing else. I know that there are some initiatives we could sell the town garage and that would get us $200,000 one year and so forth. But fundamentally, I think it's really going to be around the grand list. So this work plan may not be work that Kareem and I do, but it may be, we will have to be reaching out to all of you on the other projects to get input from this. And then the last item on the work plan is how can we communicate the information we've gathered and engage the community in a discussion of our long-term financial prospects. So I think what I was proposing from a timetable is developing communication plan and writing the story, so forth, in July and August. And then since you can't really hold meetings then, to hold public meetings in September, that may need to change.
Can you go back to the earlier page?
Sure.
So can you tell us what input you want for the model so that we can do our work and drive and go straight into your model?
Yes, but you also need, so for example, let's just put that as a task. There's some of those decisions you actually make, and some of them I would recommend you make. And so, can you just make a note of that? To do that? I can, all right, any other?
Yeah, I do have one request, John. So just for folks to know, I sort of put on my sort of audit cap on, and I looked at the first iteration of the model that John had built. And the findings is really an exchange of an Excel spreadsheet between John and I, and they're divided in three big buckets. One is, let's take a look at the formulas, make sure everything is accurate, do a lot of spot checks. And then also when I would find something, even though technically the formula might be accurate, I may have some questions around the rationale of that formula. And then the third piece, which really feeds into the communication strategy, right, which is the last piece, is some of the graphs that would come out of that, et cetera. So I would give some feedback on how we may want to clarify those, et cetera. And John and I have been, exchanging a lot of back and forth. So what I would ask John is, once you get into the next iteration of the model where you would add pieces, say around water company or update pieces, just give me a heads up so I can jump back in and take a look again at those three big buckets. And also in that plan that you put together, if you could just sort of highlight which are the pieces, or maybe we can have a meeting about this, where you would like me to come and help you do some of those things, because I see in some cases there's interviews that need to be held, et cetera. Right, because right now I'm only wearing my auditor's hat, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I haven't assumed either you or I or anyone else would be doing any of those things. I'm just saying what needs to be done. There's no.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
No, I understand. But since I volunteered to help you with that, we should just flush it out. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay, so you and I can just meet on that. Also, I think what needs to be added is the integrated financial strategy that Tom brought up. That needs to be on this work plan.
You mean the funding strategy?
The integrated financing strategy.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Because this is where it's going to come together.
Mm-hmm.
So that.
So to make that work, then we need the source of finance.
Yeah, sorry.
We need the source of financing for each of the different projects. Because
How much financing needed?
Exactly.
And potential different sources. I mean, there may be a water treatment grant.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Tom was suggesting was on the near-term aspect, the funding costs could be pretty modest on the municipal financing, and we should take advantage of that and use that lump fund for engineering across all these different species.
And the point I was making was that different projects have different advantageous interest rates from different sources. So we should just be knowledgeable about it.
Right. We need an integrated, even if the elements of that plan are specific to each project. But in order to take it, yeah, right. Okay, Roger, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a couple. One, it continues to disturb me when I see the town hall plan, the town hall upgrades included on documentation that's talking about what are really existential issues facing the town. Whereas I would argue that the town hall is not an existential issue facing the town, and it keeps getting bumped up as if it were because of, frankly, parochial interests. So I think that's, I would suggest looking at that. And secondly, just to second what everybody was saying about communication, I think you have to assume a lot of bad faith when it comes time to start talking about what all of these things mean and what the costs and benefits are going to be for taxpayers. So I would start working on that ASAP, and I would be happy to help with something like that as well.
Sort of the bad faith project, would we call it that, or?
Well, I don't think that would be the great communication strategy, but it's not an untrue.
Right. All right. So I think communication is clearly going to be an important part of this. I think it's probably just premature at this point, since we have some timing questions about what's going to happen when and so forth. But
May I just have a
comment, Joe.
point that I'd like to make on town hall, if I could, which is that I agree with Roger. It's not existential to do a 13 million soup to nuts complete revision of town hall. architects, engineers have had a certain number of expenses which need to be made in the near term, or we're going to end up destroying.
I can't hear Tom. I can't hear
Yeah,
anything he's saying.
I think, yeah, yeah, Tom, sorry, you're breaking up, but I think the question is, I think the simple answer to Roger's question before we get into almost the sort of the substance of it is, I think we need to be considering anything that the town is considering doing. Not whether, and not, we can't sort of say we assumed that was zero because we think it's not important. We may think it's not. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing with you, Roger or Tom. But I think that we have to include it in our model. We have to include something in our model. We could include zero in our model if that's what the town tells us is the most likely scenario or something. But
Well, John, the town sponsored a committee. We hired architects. The architect said you have a certain amount of urgent need, and I think we should reflect that at some point.
well, I think the new committee, we should just take our guy. All I'm saying is we should not be the one to decide which projects we include or exclude. We should take our guidance from the town, which is, I think, Tom, what you're saying.
Amen.
Yeah, that's fair.
Exactly. Yes.
So, all right. And Roger, with due respect, I mean, I understand your point of view, and I'm not opining on that point of view. I'm just saying that I don't think our role is yeah. Anyway, you get the point.
No, I think that's a fair analysis. I agree with that. You can't say no, it's not important if the town has said it's important.
Or if the town is examining it, I guess.
But what we could do as a finance committee is say, here's the effect if we do nothing with town hall. Here's the effect if we do a $5 million bond. Here's the effect if we do a $10 million bond.
We have to ask the town hall team exactly the same questions we're asking the water company team and the wastewater treatment plant team, and the same questions that the education team has answered, which is tell us what the options are and how much they'll cost. And
Some are voluntary, some are non.
I understand. Yeah. So, all right. So let's just because we only have a few minutes left. The town village accounting and reporting.
There's not much to report.
Which is okay.
So as we know, we didn't put anything in the budget for next year. And basically, I understand that in the fall, they're going to look through, various software solutions. Nothing has happened, so there's really nothing.
Okay, nothing to report. Let's talk offline about, in thinking about the integrated financial model.
Yeah. Well, I know the three of us worked on
Yes.
management reports, but.
Right, no, I'm talking about something sort of more conceptually.
Yeah.
I think that we have an obligation as a finance committee to at least have a point of view that says, we think that operating improvements over time could have a meaningful effect. It's not gonna be huge,
Yeah.
but
Beneficial.
Yeah.
or it's really not worth our time because the effects would likely be very small. And so I think, not that we can start that without the other things,
Right.
but I think that that's something that should be our purpose. And I think, and I don't know whether it's possible or not. I can imagine that it's possible to get some moderate but valuable savings or not. I just don't know. And I think we need to find out. That's people okay with that purpose? Does that make sense? So, okay. Benchmarking. Roger and Kareem, anything to report?
Sure, Roger, I'm gonna jump in and if you want to add something. It's pretty quick. Hold on, let me just put the link here. All right, so there's a presentation that we put together quickly, and really our focus was to come up with sort of mission statement around benchmarking because it could be interpreted in a million different ways. And we proposed one. Love to get some feedback on it, either now or later by email. And then we came up with a dozen or so opportunities or ideas to benchmark. And after going through a variety of filters, so slide 2 is sorry, slide 3 is slide 2 is the mission statement. Okay. Give people like 10 seconds to read it. If there's anything that you're violently against or you thought that we left out, just, you can shoot Roger and me, or just say it now. And then the next slide has to do with the filtering process, and we considered a bunch of variables, and those variables really are around, the criticality to the town, whether there's a fit with the finance committee's mandate, the degree of difficulty of obtaining data and analyzing it, and also pretty much we prioritized. And if you jump to slide number 4, these are the dozen or so ideas that we had come up with.
Again, I can read these on my screen.
Okay, and then finally, after meeting on those with Roger, we figured that let's focus on 3 of them based on the level of priority, and that's on slide 5. And we're looking to benchmark our town's operating costs. There's no surprise there. We're looking at non-property tax revenues, opportunities to raise other revenues and see what other towns are doing. And then finally, not as high, but still we put it on the list, our capacity to secure grants, whether, we are taking advantage of everything that's out there. And this one's going to be tough to get data around. So these are the 3 out of that list of 12 or 13 that we thought we need to focus on. And our next steps are on slide 6. And by the way, if you don't agree with those 3 or one of them you think is really not important, just let us know. Because we'd like to obtain feedback from all of you guys, the rest of the finance committee. We'd like to obtain feedback from Eric. And once we identify the 1, 2, or 3 benchmarking projects, it's to flush out, first off, on priority number 1, how to collect the internal metrics, what are the benchmark points, which are the other towns, Vermont town, etc. Figure out the list of available sources of data, identify any internal, external partners that we're going to need to work with, and finally, based on all that, then we will flush out a timeline. Obviously, those benchmarking studies are not time-driven as critical as some of the other projects which require votes, etc. But we will put a timeline out there. Roger, I don't know if you want to add anything. Roger's still there.
Roger, you're muted if you're talking.
No, I'm fine. That was great, Kareem. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So really the first ask from the rest of the finance committee is if you can take, a few minutes to look at that list later on after our meeting and get back to Roger and me on whether you agree with the 3 items and the way you prioritize them to look at a benchmarking study.
Okay, thank you. Those 3 look good.
That's impressive.
Those 3 look good to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, don't wait, unless someone disagrees, don't wait to move ahead on those.
Yeah.
Those
All
all
right.
seem, and the idea of picking a few as opposed to many is, I think, very reasonable. I would say one point, because I think you talked about the difficulty of gathering data, and in terms of operating costs, I can imagine, like, for example, I've tried to figure out how much each of our surrounding towns are spending on their highways. It's non-trivial because everyone accounts for highways differently.
Yeah, I figure, yeah.
Right, but I think the first thing on item 1, the first approach should be total, what I described in the integrated financial plan, which total municipal spending per capita.
Yep.
And just do that and see whether or not, and then from the outliers, you'll then and will be forced to dig deeper, and that's when you'll confront the difficult in data gathering. But I think it will be easy to gather total municipal spending per capita.
Yeah, I think the per capita is the grand equalizer across everything. And then once we do that, we'll start digging. And I think that the other big challenge is the choice of the benchmark towns. And
Right.
and that's, once we identify those, again, we will ask for your opinion on those. But our next steps would be probably to sit down with Eric and get his feedback, because it's something that he's going to have to use ultimately, whatever outcome we we discovered.
Bernie, do you think it would be it's Tom here. Do you think it would be helpful if we benchmarked against all the same towns for all the same studies? And in other words, kind of a consistent run through, let's just say it's Hanover and Manchester, I'm just making it up. Or do we want to benchmark against Windsor?
I do think that for the first two metrics, which are financial driven, one is non-property tax revenue, the other one is operating costs, we could easily use the same set. For the access to grants, there might be a little twist there because we have a historical village. Maybe we want to look at towns that do have a historical aspect to them because that might drive whether you can get some grants or not.
And then you've got a town that has a water company versus not, so it may
Yep.
depend.
Okay.
Yeah, one thing, Kareem, so you're aware, the state publishes in a single document, not the population. There are 252 municipalities or something like that in Vermont, and the state publishes the tax revenue of every one of them. Budget.
Yeah,
So-
no, I've seen a lot of the tax data
Yeah.
when I was working on the 1% couple years
Right.
ago. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, great, this is great. Any other questions about benchmarking? Okay, let's go back to the agenda, and Cynthia has been very patiently waiting and listening. So Cynthia has, can you just introduce, maybe, can you come up here and Cynthia has volunteered to head up the regionalization initiative and just give us 2 minutes on
Okay,
what you're thinking of doing.
okay. My name is Cynthia Stevens. I live in Woodstock, and it seems to me that the most important aspect of this regionalized purchasing is to get the information from the other towns. The other towns that we would contact would be the ones in the school district as well as Heartland and Windsor. I've already met with Eric Duffy, and because I don't work for the government or volunteer, on one of your boards, Eric is going to introduce me to his contacts in these towns and say that gauge the interest in perhaps this effort to combine our purchasing to get better prices. And then I would be able to follow up with those contacts who are interested in perhaps, joining with us. And it would seem that road sand and salt might be the places to start. Eric was thinking, let's just start with that. He suggested that maybe police radios would be another area to work on. But I think the biggest challenge, I think this is fairly straightforward. The biggest challenge will be getting in touch with people, getting them to call me back, getting them to supply the information. But once we have the information, I think we can probably make a judgment as to how to proceed. And, fortunately, John put together a wonderful format here. And, I would ask John if you don't mind slipping the dots here.
Yes, correct. No, exactly. I'm sorry. That one that's the work plan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's going to take me a minute to get to.
That's very special.
But
Cynthia, knowing some of these towns,
Yes.
a visit might pay dividends.
Oh, sure. I'd be willing to do that. Yeah, that's a great idea.
one thing, Kareem, coming to you in a second, but just one thing before I forget. Eric is holding a municipal
When
summit.
is that?
Yes, I think it's in April, and he is inviting town managers from across Vermont.
Okay.
As of last I heard, he had 8 or 10. He was hoping for 50. He was expecting 15 or 16.
Uh-huh.
That will not exactly coincide, or may not coincide at all, with the list of towns that you had.
Uh-huh.
But I would just strongly suggest you just talk to him and find out if there's an opportunity to.
First, you get
Yeah.
the date, maybe it's a good thing to
Yeah.
attend.
Right,
So,
absolutely.
but the thing is that many of the towns you're talking to don't have a town manager.
Mhm.
So you're going to need to go to select board meetings. I'm
Oh.
thinking of Plymouth.
Oh, well,
have-
there's to be somebody to call, to start out with.
Nope. So all the decisions, somewhere in a town like Plymouth, all the decisions are made by the select board.
Uh-huh.
They have a person that works in the office. You could talk to them, but they'll have no information. So you might want to target a member of the select board that one
Yes.
of us knows
Yes.
to talk with them. It's going to be a bit more complicated than coming to Woodstock.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Well, why don't you start
Good
out?
information.
Yeah. So consider us as a resource.
Right, so I can give you a great name in Plymouth.
Good. good,
And if you tackle it like that,
sure,
you'll cut through a lot of barriers.
right. Yeah, I still think it'll be helpful for Eric
Yeah.
to send notes to
Yeah.
these people and say, are you interested? And,
Depends who he's sending them to.
yes, exactly.
'Cause
Well,
he doesn't have the history with these people, although
okay,
he's building.
do you
Yeah.
want to give me the name in Plymouth right now?
But can we do it offline? Do that offline, but I think follow up and I think maybe Jill, maybe the process way to handle this is get the name from Jill.
Yeah.
If anyone else has any names, send them to Cynthia. You can send them to me. I'm your contact, so you can
Okay.
send them to me. I have your email address. I'll
Yep.
distribute that. But then come back to us.
Mhm.
We meet every month. Let me know as your
Okay,
point of contact.
yes.
And if you're running into problems,
Mhm.
or you're running into problems in town X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And then we'll work Jill's suggestion that way.
Okay,
I think it would be really interesting to go to that village manager gathering here.
yes, it would
It-
be.
To attend it.
I
Yeah.
wondered that, well, in April, I'll either be in Costa Rica for 2 weeks or having a hip replacement. Just have to get the right date.
Maybe that Eric brings it, if you can't make it, one of us can go, or that Eric brings it up for 15
Well,
minutes. He says,
Okay,
And he might already have gone through the process that we're just talking about,
yes,
where there isn't a village manager. Who is he invited?
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, my point is,
Yeah.
okay, Kareem,
Yeah, thanks, Cynthia. So I have a suggestion first, and two, I have a question regarding the scope of that project. So the suggestion first, it looks like, this sounds a lot like an optimization or re-engineering sort of initiative around procurement, right?
Yes.
What's the biggest bang for the buck, right? So with that in mind, I was wondering if, we could see if somebody in Woodstock, either still active or retired, has been involved in procurement, or maybe in one of those towns, there's a procurement specialist, or even maybe at the state level, that might be somebody, could be a sounding board. All right, so that's one suggestion that, would make us, yeah. The second question has to do around scope. So I understood that this was pooling in order to get sort of the best price, but would that project at some point include, or that might be a new project later, John? Or maybe it's part of the non-property tax revenue opportunities and the benchmarking, I'm not sure. I also thought that it might be an opportunity to see if some of our services could be quote unquote, offered and sold to some of those other towns. Or is this beyond that scope?
My interpretation was that this was first step on procurement.
Mhm.
Once we developed communications with other towns, then services and the scaling of those services would be next. But I think that would be, just my opinion here. I think this is less,
offensive.
yes, less confrontational,
Mhm.
and it's a way to get under the hood, so to speak, to go forward.
No, understood, but I'm just asking if there might be a phase two, if that phase one is successful, right?
Definitely. I think they're definitely what I mean. It's sort of like police radios is a tiny phase two.
Right,
Shared human resources or finance services is a major
Yeah,
phase two.
sure, yeah.
right. And then, and
Well, let's
then
get-
anything we would find on other revenue opportunities in the benchmarking could be handed over to that project team, actually.
If regionalization
Yeah.
adds value to it.
Okay, thanks.
All right, good. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. All right, well, we've actually made some real progress. I mean, it's just planning, not just planning. Some of it is worth, but I think we focused it down. This is great. Any further questions, given that we're 9 minutes over the deadline? By the way, I guess you guys didn't get the memo about the requirement at finance committee meetings that you all wear a tracksuit. So,
No, only if you're a Russian oligarch.
right. So, I guess I don't know how we're gonna enforce that, but I'll give that some thought. Any other issues before we adjourn?
No, the only thing is I'd like to remind, since more people joined, and I know I'm being a pain about it, but any documents that you feel are relevant, please place them in the shared folder. That way we maintain that for.
Right, and I want to
for
remind
reference
you,
purposes.
I want to remind you of one other thing. We cannot have conversations on email.
Yeah.
You're just flouting the law and it's not worth it. So please, if you want to have a conversation with somebody, don't copy all.
Yep.
All right. I'll put all of the documents into the shared folder, and we need to make sure that that's accessible from the website. All right, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Move. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Good meeting. Good, just really good discussion.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I assume it's yours.
Thank you.